Welcome to Tattletale. Here's today's story, The Girl Who Spoke in Rhymes. They said she was odd, a little offbeat. Spoke only in rhyme, from her head to her feet. She lived on the hill in a house made of pine. And every word from her mouth came out as a line. In school she was quiet, sat alone near the glass. Whispered to flowers and rarely spoke in class. When the teacher called Luna, she'd raise her hand slow. Then say something cryptic, like, "The sparrow will go." The others would giggle, then mimic her speech. But Luna just smiled and stared at the beach. For her eyes were like tides, calm but aware. As if she saw stories that weren't even there. One day a new student arrived from the south. With a scar on his cheek and a joke in his mouth. He laughed loud and bright, made the room come alive. But the moment he met Luna, his voice took a dive. She glanced at the boy, then looked to the sky. And softly she murmured, "The travelers lie." He blinked at her words, unsure what she meant. But her gaze held him still, like a message was sent. He sat next to Luna from that moment on. And each day she'd greet him with riddles at dawn. "Tell me," he asked her, "why speak in this way?" But she'd only reply, "Some truths must delay." He thought it was charming, a poetic act. A girl with a rhythm and riddles to unpack. But the more that she rhymed, the more strange it became. Because each little verse seemed to predict things by name. The paper will fly, and the answer will burn. She said this one morning, and at lunch, it was learned. A quiz from the teacher flew into the flame. When the wind caught it swiftly during a game. Then came the next line, "The mirror will fall." And hours later? A crack down the hall. No one believed her, not really at all. Except for the boy, who they now called Paul. He started to write down the things that she said. Lines from her lips he would scrawl by his bed. And patterns emerged, some subtle, some loud. Like thunder that speaks before comes the cloud. Then one rainy night, when the sky lost its stars, Luna walked barefoot to the edge of the yard. She looked at the moon with her hands in her coat. And whispered a line that caught in her throat. "The one who will stay must be ready to part. For silence begins when he gives her his heart." Paul, from the porch, heard every word. And something inside him began to stir. What did she mean? Was it warning or test? Was he meant to be close, or leave like the rest? The next day at school, Paul watched her in awe. Every small motion, each word that he saw. She hummed to herself as she sketched in her book. And he swore that the clouds shifted each time she looked. "Luna," he whispered, "what did you mean? About silence and parting? Was that a dream?" But she didn't answer, just smiled with her eyes. And handed him something, a page full of skies. She'd drawn him a picture of two shadowed trees. One bent by fire, the other by breeze. And down in the corner, in delicate ink, she'd written a rhyme that made his heart sink. When branches entwine, and the root line is blurred, one will be lost, but the other has heard. So when you feel thunder inside of your chest, remember, the silence is also a test. Paul folded the drawing, unsure what to say. But the look on her face had now faded away. She seemed far, unreachable, ghost-like and dim. And he wondered if all this was meant just for him. Weeks carried forward, and whispers grew fast. "Luna's a witch," kids would mutter in class. She cursed the projector. She hexed the whole test. She talks like a ghost, she's just not like the rest. But Paul never joined them. In fact, he grew near. Drawn to her riddles and half-uttered fear. And once in the library, quiet and late, she handed him poems that spelled out a date. The 13th of April, at 3:15. Go to the place where no people will be. Bring not a flower, nor token of gold. Just bring what is heavy and never grows old. That time and that day, Paul stood in the square. The clock struck 3:15, no one was there. No Luna, no riddles, no shadow or sign. Just silence that rang like a warning in rhyme. But something inside him, the weight in his chest, told him this moment was more than a test. And just when he turned back to leave with regret, he heard a soft whisper, "Don't forget, yet." He spun in confusion, but no one was near. Just Luna's soft voice, like it rang in his ear. A chill chased his spine as he turned once again, and noticed the drawing tucked into a drain. He reached down and opened the paper with care. It was folded and soaked, but the ink still was there. Another new verse, strange, broken and torn. Before I was speaking, I watched them be born. The rhymes are not mine, they fall from the sky. And one day, they'll stop, when I tell my last lie. Paul stood in the silence, the drawing in hand. And the hairs on his neck rose up like a strand. Because under the verse was a hastily drawn face. It was his, next to Luna's, with an empty space. Paul held the drawing with trembling hands, staring at symbols he couldn't understand. His face in the sketch, Luna's drawn beside. And a third empty space where someone should hide. Was it a warning? A puzzle? A game? Or a picture of who or what never came? The thought made him dizzy, the sky felt like glass. And time seemed to freeze as the minutes would pass. Back home he asked questions he couldn't explain. Like why Luna's words had danced in his brain. Why did she speak like the wind knew her mouth? Why did her rhymes echo silence and doubt? The next time he saw her, she sat in the sun. Her lips humming something, her hands coming undone. She braided her hair with a leaf and a thread. And turned to him softly, then quietly said, "The space that you saw is not made of bone. It's something you carry, and carry alone. But soon it will shift, and you'll see it in light. The moment you choose not to run from the night." "What night?" Paul asked. "What choice must I make?" But Luna just whispered, "Don't know till you break." And that's when he noticed, the bruise on her knee, the scratch on her wrist, and the cut near her sleeve. "You're hurt," he said. "Luna, what happened here?" She paused, and then smiled. "A voice I can't hear. He speaks when I sleep, but he sounds like the wind. And tells me my rhymes are the way things begin." Paul's chest grew tighter. His voice nearly cracked. "Luna, this isn't just poetry, fact? Are you saying these words come from someone unknown?" She nodded once slowly, "But I am alone." That night in his room, he wrote down each line. Every cryptic prediction, each moment in time. And when he aligned them from first until last, a rhythm emerged from her echoing past. The girl with the rhymes will forget how to speak. The day that her heart finds what it seeks. For once she is seen, and no longer blind. The voice in the wind will reclaim her mind. He dropped the notebook, his stomach turned cold. Reclaim her mind? What did that hold? Was she possessed? Or trapped in some deal? Why did her rhymes feel so painfully real? And worse than that line, like a bell that had rung, came one final sentence. "She dies with her tongue." Paul didn't sleep, just stared at the page, feeling a fear that turned into rage. What did it mean, she dies with her tongue? Was her life like a poem that's already sung? The next day at school, he found her alone, tracing a rhythm on benches of stone. Her lips made no sound, but her fingers tapped beats. Like she counted the world through invisible sheets. "Luna," he said, "we need to talk. No rhymes, no riddles, just real, just raw." She blinked at his tone, and tilted her head. Then answered in rhyme, like he should have guessed. "If I speak plainly, the rhyme will resist. The truth that you want does not quite exist. But if you must know what the verses conceal, then listen to silence, and not what you feel." "I read your lines," he said through his teeth. "She dies with her tongue, what lies underneath?" Her eyes didn't flinch, but her rhythm went still. and the wind caught her hair like it bent to her will. Each person is born with a number of sounds. A set number